Welcome back to time now for a check of all the top business news stories. For that, I'm joined by William Edwards from our business desk. Morning to you again, William.
Hello, Tom.
Now, we've been hearing from Nicolas Sarkozy, his take on the economic crisis here in Europe, using some quite bleak language. We've got Angela Merkel speaking later this Friday. Where does all this leave us?
Well, we seem to be inching closer towards a new potential solution for the Eurozone crisis. This one could finally be involving the European Central Bank, which we've been talking about for quite some time. We also heard from Mario Draghi. I'm mixing up my Marios. Mario Draghi, the new head of the European Central Bank yesterday, and he seemed to hint that if we see closer financial integration between European states, then the ECB itself could take more action to help them. So this integration does seem to be moving closer and closer, but one of the key sticking points is how to censor countries if they step out of line. Basically, if they go over their budgets, that sort of thing. Does Brussels step in and tell them off? Is there some sort of fine? How will that work? Because there are rules at the moment, but everybody pretty much breaks them, including Germany. Let's take a look at the new fight for the battle over control of the EU.
When European leaders built the bloc, they set ambitious fiscal rules. All member states had to respect deficit and debt limits. Annual deficits had to be lower than 3% of GDP, and total government debt couldn't go over 60% of GDP. But quickly, almost all Eurozone countries breached the rules, and there was no way to stop them. Now the debt crisis has spread through the bloc. Yet its two largest economies, France and Germany, say the Eurozone can still be saved. They say this can only happen if everyone respects deficit and debt limits.
There must be sanctions, automatic sanctions, more severe penalties. For those who do not honor their promises, every country must adopt a balanced budget amendment.
The French and Germans agree on the need for more discipline, but they still don't agree on how to punish those who breach the rules. President Sarkozy wants governments to keep as much power as possible. Germany says that the European Commission should have the power to inspect and veto budgets, and that the European Court of Justice should decide which penalties to apply. Germany and France also disagree on the role the European Central Bank should play. President Sarkozy wants the ECB to intervene more and eventually bail out states. Chancellor Merkel firmly opposes the plan. The ECB says that even without a reform, it's ready to act more aggressively.
Well, on that Eurozone theme, David Cameron is heading to Paris later on this Friday. He's hoping the UK won't be left too much out in the cold.
That's right. Of course, we're hearing all about France and Germany, but what about the nations that aren't inside the Eurozone but are in the EU? The UK is one of those. And David Cameron is in a bit of trouble at home over this, or could be. He's a bit worried that the UK will be left out of a two-tier or a two-speed Eurozone. President Sarkozy has been talking quite a bit about this theme. He seems to think that's going to be what we're seeing, those countries inside the Eurozone and those countries outside. It does create a headache for David Cameron, whose party is, at the moment, particularly anti-European, but they may well call, if we see treaty changes suggested by France and Germany, the UK, his party may call for a referendum on this. And David Cameron himself could be the guy who ends up defending the EU in the face of his own party. So this could create headaches for him. He's in Paris today. He's going to be talking with Nicolas Sarkozy about that, amongst other themes.
All right, so lots for investors to digest this Friday. How's trading going?
Well, it's a pretty mixed story at the moment, actually. Let's take a look at how things closed in the US last night, because what we're seeing more here is reaction ahead of jobs figures coming out on Friday in the US. We had a report on Thursday which saw new unemployment figures higher than expected, so not much optimism around. Let's take a look at how things are in Asia as well. The Nikkei is seeing itself into the green there, and that is continuing a rally that was underway on Thursday as well. But the rest of the markets, as you can see there, pretty much flat or in the red.
All right, now one thing that could help the Eurozone is a stronger IMF backing behind it. Now, that might not come without strings attached. Well, that's according to Brazil anyway.
That's right. The head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, has been in Brazil, and she's been hearing about the importance of BRICS nations, as they're known: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, of course. Yeah, of course, very different times to how things used to be. It used to be that the IMF came over and made loans to Brazil to get them out of trouble. Brazil's finance minister, Guido Mantega, did note that this time the IMF was asking them for money rather than distributing it. The question is, will the BRICS give more money to the IMF if Europe needs help? Well, Guido Mantega said that basically the BRICS are hoping for greater voting rights in the IMF if this is going to go ahead. And he said that before Europe gets any more help, it should do more to help itself. Let's take a listen.
We have agreed to make our funds available if Europe also takes measures and does its part. Because we will not give out our resources if they, who in theory are much richer than us, don't give out theirs.
All right, now businessman Richard Branson has been styling himself as a rather unlikely hero in anti-capitalist camps.
Well, he's been giving his support to the Occupy movement. He's been saying that they've got a few good ideas and he's been getting behind them. It's interesting, of course, as you say, he's very much a star of the business world. He's always, of course, styled himself kind of as the bad boy of business, a bit of a rebel. His new book, which he's been promoting, which is when these comments came out, is called Screw Business as Usual, perhaps. Not the most subtle of titles, but that's his philosophy. But it's interesting to show that the Occupy movement isn't all about just simply anti-capitalism, but there's a strong strand within it which is saying that capitalism should be reformed. And it's this element that Richard Branson has been getting behind. But also, of course, he's just bought a bank himself in the UK, the remains of Northern Rock. He's saying that he's going to try and start up microfinancing there, microloans, to help smaller businesses get off the ground. And for a man who's just bought a bank, he's been rather scathing towards bankers. Let's take a listen.
You know, there were people in the banking community that screwed up big time, and they've almost brought the world to its knees. And so, you know, so I think in particular, those people really need to not just put a new face on, but actually put a new face on with real meaning in trying to, you know, to compensate in a sense for the damage they've done. And so, you know, people, you know, in the banking community get big bonuses. They must put those bonuses to good use.
And finally, if you are rather partial to a drop of whiskey at Christmas, we might have some rather worrying news for you. William, what's this about?
Well, it's a victim of its own success, basically. Scottish whiskey, Scotch. Sales are up in the last 9 months, are up 23%. Exports, mainly to South America and Asia. These burgeoning middle-class economies really seeing exceeding amounts of demand there. But, of course, it takes 10 to 15 years to mature Scottish whiskey. So there are worries that there could be shortages of supply because it's very difficult just to up production in a very short time when you've got a 10 to 15 year window of maturing there. So a few worries for stocks of Scotch.
All right, so we could have a decade of no whiskey. Thank you very much indeed for that news, William Edwards, and thanks to you for watching. That's all we've got time for. Do stay tuned to France 24.